Today's shiur begins at the top line of Daf Yud. In our previous shiur, we noted that the diamond was used to highlight comments made by Shmuel. We had on Daf Tes Amud Beis Shmuel's point that a person is believed through his taina of Pesach Pasuach to mafsid her ksuba. We continue with the same topic on the top line. Itmar Omar of Nachman, Omar Shmuel, Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, Chachomim tiknu lohem livnois Yisrael, lebesula mosayim ulalmona mona. The sages established that a virgin, a besula, when she gets married, she is entitled to have a minimum of 200 zuz. It's an amount of money to be guaranteed to her in her ksuba, which of course would be paid upon the husband's death or his divorcing her. And almona, a widow, on the other hand, was provided with a ksuba of 100 zuz. Mona is 100. V'heim haminuhu, and they granted believability to the husband. Shim Omar Pesach Pasuach Matzasi, I found her to have been a non-virgin through my act of intimacy with her. I found her to be open, that she was not a virgin. Ne'eman, he would be believed. And when we say he would be believed, it means that she will not get the money, in the case of the psula, that he otherwise would have been obligated to pay. On the top line, Chachomim tiknu leisha v'chulei. Rashi on the top line, Klomar I havoi ksuba sa d'oraisa. Had the ksuba guarantee been something provided for by the Torah itself, lo havinemon lafkia el be'edus yidua. He wouldn't have been able to prevent her from receiving the money unless you had positive testimony through witnesses. Avol ksubasa chachomim tiknuha. The truth, though, according to what we're seeing here, is that the chachomim established the ksuba. Heimamru v'heimamru. They say when there is a ksuba, and they can tell you when there is not. Heim shetiknuha, they who established the ksuba idea, amru, they also say, in other words, they can make all the rules. So they established the idea that the woman gets a ksuba, but they also provided for his being believed, the husband's believability. Shehu ne'emon lahafsida af b'tainis pesach pasuach. He would be able to cause her to lose the ksuba payment with the claim that I found her to be open already. I found her to be a non-virgin. The Gemara asks, Im kain, ma ho'ilu chachomim b'takonosam. If it's so that he, through his claim, can undo the obligation to pay through his claim, so of what value was there in the original rabbinic provision for her to receive a ksuba? It's like building a house of cards. It's something that's so easily knocked over. What's the value in the original takona, therefore? Omar Rava. So Rava tells us you don't have to worry about the husband simply popping up with a claim that she's already been with another man with a claim of Pesach Pasuach. Chazoka ein odam toireach b'seuda umafsida. A husband isn't going to invest so much effort in preparing the wedding meal. In fact, that's what the husband is obligated to do. He's supposed to invest in preparing an elaborate meal, which involves a lot of time and expenditure, and do all of that just to have the marriage dissolved and mafsid, and to basically experience the whole thing as a loss. So that if a person is already coming with the claim after having made all of that effort to prepare the seudah, and he's claiming that she was with another man, and I claim that because Pesach Pasuch Matzasi, you can rest assured that he is telling the truth. The Rashi explains thusly on the second narrow line, Chazokin Odom Teref B'Surah, Ein Lochush, you don't have to worry Shiton Odom Kach, that a person will make this claim simply out of thin air. Elo be'emes, it must be a claim of truth. Shim hoya soine oisom etchila. If let's say this husband had really hated her from the outset, he was let's say a scheming type of guy. He hated her from the beginning. Lo hoya toireach b'suda v'koinso mafsid sudaso chinam. He wouldn't have invested so much effort in preparing that meal and then taking her in as his wife, all for nothing. Ella hoya megarsha mitchila. He would have, if he had, let's say, developed an antipathy toward his wife, after the kiddushin, he would have divorced her from the outset. He wouldn't have waited this long and invest in the meal and go through all of this only to pop out with some kind of unfounded claim. So it must be that. What have we shown here? That the Chachomim's takona of ksuba for the woman is a takona that will last. It's not so easily knocked over. If a person is coming with the claim of Pesach Patzuach, it must be that that's what he really experienced, and not just some type of subterfuge to avoid paying the ksuba. Tana. Hayil uknas chachomimhu lo sigve elo min haziburis. We have a Tanaic source that the Gemara is very shortly going to redo, but it says that since this is a fine levied by the chachomim, the ksuba payment is portrayed here as a fine. So, and it's a fine that's rabbinic in origin. The woman, when she comes to collect, she collects from ziburas. Ziburas is the lowest quality property that a person might be in possession of. There's an objective amount that she's going to collect in terms of value. However, when it comes to collection, let's say it's a non-cash payment, but rather she's going to collect from real estate that the husband owns, she is entitled to collect her ksuba only from the poorest quality real estate, because it's a type of payment that's portrayed as a knas chachomim, a rabbinic fine. The Gemara asks, knasa, my knasa? Knas implies some wrongdoing that had taken place. What's the knas? What association does knas have with a ksuba? Elo emo, rather restate it as follows. Since the payment for the ksuba is a rabbinic ruling, it's not a Torah-based financial obligation, but a rabbinic obligation. Lo sigva elo min hazibur. She's not entitled to collect from high quality property, but rather from his poorest quality property. Once again, she's going to be getting the value, but in general, throughout halacha, if a person were presented with the option of receiving 20 acres of arid desert land in the state of Utah, 20 acres of that, or a parking spot in Midtown Manhattan, which would be the same value. It's the area on which you could fit an automobile. So a person would prefer to have what we call edis, the high quality property, even if it's area-wise much less, but providing payment from high-quality property, that's characteristic of those types of debts and financial obligations that are Torah-based. If something is purely rabbinic, so the collector, the claimant of that payment, can collect only from ziburas, the poorest quality property that the person owes. poorest quality property from that person that owes the payment. The Gemara continues, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Kesubos isha min ha-torah. You can see he clearly argues on the Tanakama, and you can see the way we've marked this with a dashed underlining. His claim is that the ksuba payment is from the Torah. Contrast this with the first dashed underlining where it said Talkonas Chachomim. On the side, under our Nosei Mivneh heading, a bow tie is featured. And this bow tie's purpose is liyashev shitas Reb Shimon Gamliel iksuba d'oraisa oy d'Rabbanan. We have to resolve what his opinion is. Is ksuba Torah based? And if it's Torah based, so it would entitle the woman to collect from higher quality property than just ziburis, or not. So the Gemara continues. Umi Omar Rab Shimon ben Gamliel Hachi. Would Rab Shimon ben Gamliel have said thusly that Kesubos isha is from the Torah? V'atanya. The pasuk says, and Rashi points out that the pasuk is in the context of a man who, in the Torah, is described as someone who seduces a woman. The pasuk says, "Kesef yishkol kemoyer habasulas." The offender, the person who seduced the woman, has to pay an amount of money, kemoyer habasulas. This pasuk describes a situation of a man who seduced a woman, and in the event that she does not want to marry him, so the pasuk says he shall pay her kesef yishkol kemoyer habasulos. Shi'eh zeh kemoyer habasulos umor habasulos kozeh. Through we'll say Gzeira Shavis, we learn that this payment is like Mohar Habasulos. Now the term Mohar Habasulos is a term referring to a ksuba that a person would pay to a basula. And the payment here should be like the Mohar Habasulos, and Umor Habasulos kozeh, and the payment that is made to basula should be like this. In other words, we have two topics. We have the topic of the payment in the case of seduction and the non-marriage thereof. And we have the case of someone who rapes a basula. Two separate topics, and we learn information from one to the other. Rashi elaborates on this a bit more, but the focus of our discussion right now is not on that point specifically of what one learns from one topic to the other, but rather the fact that the Torah says there's something called Mohar Habasulos, and the word Mohar is an allusion to a ksuba. Mikan somchu chachomim l'ksubas isha min haTorah. From the fact that the Torah uses this term Mohar Habasulos, the Tanakama says that you see from here that the concept of a financial guarantee given to a woman upon her marriage is something that the Torah itself provides for. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, on the other hand, says Kesubos isha eino midivrei Torah elo midivrei sofrim. The Kesubos isha is something that is purely rabbinic. It is therefore clear to us at this point that we have a contradiction in Reb Shimon ben Gamliel's. Just compare the two bow tie sections and the dash underlining. Above, Reb Shimon ben Gamliel said Kesubos isha min haTorah, and here you see Reb Shimon ben Gamliel saying Kesubos isha midivrei sofer, meaning rabbinic. The Gemara responds and says Epuch. So switch around source number 2 to read like, in other words, switch around the Tanakama with Reb Shimon ben Gamliel in source number 2. By doing that, Reb Shimon ben Gamliel is then going to be taking the position of the Tanakama, which says Kesubos isha is from the Torah, thereby enabling us to align this source with Reb Shimon ben Gamliel's comment in the previous source that Kesubos isha is min haTorah. So this is we'll call approach number 1. You notice there's a Roman numeral that appears in our Gemara markings, and on the side we have Roman numerals 1 and 2 under our Mivneh heading, indicating these are Shtei Tshuvas, 2 answers Liyashivas to Rosh Gamliel, to resolve the contradiction that we see in Rosh Gamliel. So the first approach simply is switch around the text of the second source, thereby paralleling it with the statement of Rosh Gamliel in the previous source. The Gemara asks, so what is it that you see fit to switch around the second source? Why not switch around the first source? And if you switch around the first source, so then you'll have Reb Shimon Gamliel saying that the Kesubos Isha is a takonas chachamim, like Reb Shimon Gamliel says here in the second source. The Gemara answers, Ha Shamino le Reb Shimon Gamliel di Omar. We have heard Reb Shimon Gamliel on another occasion that says Kesubos Isha midoraisa, that the Kesuba payment is a Torah-based payment. Desnan Reb Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, and here we dashed underline his name because he's the focus of our attention right now. He says Noisei law mimois kaputya, that when the payment of the Kesuba is to be made, it's made from the Kaputya type currency. Kaputya is a name of a country, and Rashi gives a little more background to this. No say lo mimois kaputya. Rashi says Beperik Basra Tanan, in the final parak it says No sisha beretz Yisrael v'girsha kaputya. If a man had married a woman in the land of Israel and divorced her in the country of Kaputya, no say lo mimois eretz Yisrael shein kalos, he would be able to pay her from the lesser desirable currency, the Eretz Yisrael currency, because the initial marriage took place in the land of Israel. If he married her in Kaputya and divorced her in Israel, no saying lo mimois Eretz Yisrael, you would pay her again from Molos Eretz Yisrael. Minyan hakosu b'ksuba dazlinu lekula. According to this opinion, this is not the opinion that we're really focusing on right now, but you would pay the ksuba payment from the lesser type monies. The Gemara recognizes that there are different types of currencies in the world. Some are more desirable than others, and the Kaputya currency was viewed as a very desirable kind of currency. Therefore, when you now look at Rav Shimon Gamliel, he says, Noising lo mimois Kaputya, a woman who was married in Kaputya and divorced in Eretz Yisrael, she will get paid from the Kaputya, with the Kaputya currency. Shenishtabid bohem kishar milveh. The obligation was established like other loans. And you can see in the case where the initial marriage took place in Kaputya, at that point the Ksuba obligation sets in, and you view the Ksuba like you view any other loan, and that means there's a lien that is formed when the money is extended as a loan. Here it's not a loan, but it's a Ksuba, but it's parallel to a loan, and just like a loan is something that the Torah demands one must pay back, so too the Ksuba is something that the Torah expects you to pay. So this statement of Reb Shimon Gamliel saying that he shall pay her from Moz Kaputya, as we saw in the Rashi, when the marriage took place in Kaputya, at that point a shibud, a lien, is established, very similar to the way you deal with any other loan. That shows us that Reb Shimon Gamliel is viewing the Ksuba payment on a Torah level. V'i boyasema, Roman numeral number 2. Here we're going back to resolving the two statements above of Shimon Gamliel in a different way. He says as follows: Kula Rav Shimon Gamliel he. Source number 2 is authored entirely by Rav Shimon Gamliel. V'chisurei mechasr v'hachikotoni, and you have to appreciate that there are missing words in the original source, and thusly it should be understood. Mikan somchu chalmim l'ksubas isha min Torah. The pasuk had said kesef yishkol k'mar b'sulah. So from this, the chachamim understood that the ksuba of a woman is Torah based. Ksubas almona eino midivrei Torah midivrei sofrim. The ksuba that's provided for an almona, a widow that gets married, that is only rabbinic. The comment that was made in source 2 with Rav Shmuel saying that Kesubos Isha was a rabbinic provision, that is true only with regard to the Kesuba that is paid to an almona. But a Kesuba paid to a basula, that in fact is, according to Rav Shmuel, min ha-Torah. As we go on in the Gemara, we have a new marking scheme, and on the side you can see we have a nosei mivneh heading, and we indicate that this goes till Amud Beis. We have 6 maisim, 6 incidents. Shebal ba lifnei harav im taina. He comes to the Rav with a claim she'ena basula, that she's not a virgin. In other words, he marries a woman thinking that she is a basula, she's a virgin, and it turns out in the husband's mind that she is not. Now, sources or triangles 1 and 2, they introduce claims of Pesach Pasuach. The triangle 3 through 6 introduce stories or claims where he's saying, I didn't see the blood, the basulim blood that I expected to see. So now let's go through the different cases. Hahud also l'kamed Rav Nachman. A husband, came to Rav Nachman Omar Lei, and he tells Rav Nachman, Pesach Pasuch Matzasi, I found my wife to have already experienced intimacy. In other words, I found her to be open already in that part of her anatomy. Omar Lei Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman says, Asvuhu Kufri. Beat this guy. Hit him with a stick. Mi barkisa chavito lei. Here we look at Rashi. The word barkisa is the name of a city. Rashi says, Mi barkisa chavito lei zoinois ho'ir hazois shishmom mavrichsa. The harlots of this city, whose name is Mavrichsa, chavutos sheichlis tomid lefanov. This guy is apparently in constant company with harlots. Liznus, for harlotry. Me'achar shuboki bepesach puzov. Here's a guy coming in, he's so expert in how the act of penetration should feel. How does a person gain such expertise other than the fact that he's probably spending a lot of time with all kinds of women? So he knows he can sense the difference between a woman who has never been with someone versus a woman that has been, and based on that he can make his claims. It goes without saying that a person who lives a life of harlotry certainly is deserving of being beaten. The Gemara asks, "V'HaRav Nachman hu d'amar mehemon." You notice we have an arrow, and it directs us back to the top line where we open today's shiur. A person who says, Rav Nachman, quoting Shmuel, says, a person who says Pesach Pasuach Matzasi, he is believed. So why are we beating this guy? The Gemara says there's no contradiction. Mehemon, yes, he has believed. Umazvinon le kufri, but we nevertheless beat him. In other words, yes, this guy has expertise, but how did he gain the expertise? He gained it through a life of harlotry. So, yes, he is believed, but he deserves beating. Rav Achoy Mishani, Rav Achoy explains what we say, the seeming, inconsistency in Rav Nachman, namely, do we believe someone that says Pesach Pasuach Matzasi, or maybe, no, we just beat the guy and we don't believe him? He says, Kan b'bochor, kan b'nosui. Bochor is a fellow, a young man that was never married before. A person like that, Rashi adds, would simply not be believed if he says Pesach Pasuach Matzasi. And if he's so brazen as to claim such a claim, we would beat him because of his brazenness. How can he say something about this woman concerning which he knows nothing? However, Nosui, this is a person who's already been married. He will be believed when he marries a new wife thinking the second wife or the subsequent wife is a basula, we'll believe him, and certainly we will not beat him. Another case, Hahud Asal Kamei de Rabban Gamliel. Man comes to Gamliel, Omar Lei, Pesach Posov Matzasi. He says, I found her to be open. Omar Lei. So Rabban Gamliel asks, Shema Hitesa. Maybe in your act of intimacy, you position yourself in a tilted fashion. Tilting during the penetration will create a feeling that she is a non-basula, as opposed to, let's say, a direct penetration without the tilting that would puncture or pierce the membrane that we refer to as the basulim. That would cause it to open up. But since you were mate, since you tilted, maybe that's what you did, and therefore you felt that it was open when in fact it wasn't. Emshoch mashal, I'm going to give you an analogy. Your behavior can be parallel to what? A person was walking in the darkness of night. Ve'afela, ishon laila v'afela is walking at night in thick darkness, and he gets to his destination. He gets to a house, a structure, and he has to go in. Hita motzoi pasuach. Rashi says across from here, Hita kishe higia lepesach beis. When he gets to the door of his house, hasagur, a door that's closed. V'yesh bo davar ma'akvo miliftoach. There's something blocking him from opening the door straight open. Ukshematin oisoi litzdodin iftach. When you, whatever is blocking the door, when you tilt it to the sides, it enables the door to be opened. So the moshel here is someone who arrives at a door, and if he tilts the obstruction, the door will open. Lo hita. If he doesn't tilt the obstruction, motzo no, he'll find it to be locked. He can't open the door. So that when you had intimacy, maybe you tilted, and that's how you felt it was open, when it really wasn't open as a result of intimacy with some other man. Ika di amri hochi omarle. Another version of what Rav Gamliel said to this fellow after claiming Pesach Pasuach Masasi. Rav Gamliel says to him, Shema b'mezid hitesa the akris l'dasha v'avra. Maybe you deliberately tilted yourself. Knowingly you plan to have the intimacy in a deliberate fashion, what's called derech hatoya, through this tilting method. The akris l'dasha v'avra, and you were thereby able to get in without actually penetrating the basulim. The Rashi across from here, Iko the Amri, below miskabin, the difference between this version of Rav Gamliel's response and the version before, the Aleph version, is that this version holds below miskabin without a concerted effort on the man's part. Lo shechiyach hatoya. Tilting is not common. Below Amrinon, we don't say Shema Hita. That is, Rav Gamliel didn't say to the guy, maybe you tilted, Elakach Bodko. Rather, he cross-examined him this way. Shema b'mezid hites of akris l'dashav yavra. That's a karta hadeles v'barich. Maybe with intent you tilted the obstruction, and thereby, as a result of your intentional tilting away of the obstruction, you were able to enter. The Gemara goes on. Em sholach mashal. Rav Gamliel says, "I'll give you an example. Lemadav v'dayme l'adam shehu mahalech b'shalayla feil." Someone is walking through the thickness of the darkness of night. Hita b'mezid motzo pasuk. When he gets to the door, if he intentionally tries to move the obstruction away, the door will open. Lo hita. If he doesn't intentionally try to move it, he just simply tries opening the door. Motzo no, he'll find the door to be locked. Hahu de also the kamei Ram Leo bar Rebbe, a story involving someone coming to Rabbi Gamliel, the son of Rebbe. Omar Lei, the husband says to Rabbi Gamliel, he says, Rebbe, he says, Rabbi, Bo'alti v'lo matzasi dam. I had intimacy, first act of intimacy, and I found no blood. Omrolo, the wife that was there, she said, Rebbe, Besula yisi, I was never with another man. I was a virgin. So here we have we'll say a contradiction, that which sounds to be like a contradiction in claims. The husband is saying, I didn't see any blood. In other words, I didn't see. It must be that the basulim wasn't there anymore. That membrane that is present in a virgin girl had already been removed, so that in my first act of intimacy, I didn't cause any blood flow because there was no tissue matter to be broken. And the woman says, I was a basula. I was a virgin. Omar Lahem. So Rabbi Gamliel says to them, Haviu li oisu suda, bring to me the sheet upon which the couple had conducted their intimacy. Haviu lu suda hasuda, they brought the sheet. V'shoroi b'mayim, and he soaked it in water. V'chibso, and he washed it. U'motzalov kama tipei damim, and in doing so, he revealed a few drops of blood. Omar lo, so Gamliel said, Lech zechei b'mekcha, he says to the man, go and benefit from your acquisition, meaning you married this woman, go and live with her in security. Nothing wrong has happened. Omar le, we should just point out though what took place in physical terms. So Rashi says v'chipso shahoyu tipei adamim mechusim b'shikva zera. The few drops of blood that in fact were shed at the point that he broke the basulim were covered by the male semen, and that's why he didn't see it. And by exposing the sheet to the kibus, the washing of it, it thereby became revealed. The blood became revealed. Omar le Huna mor brei de Rava mi Parzakya the Ravashi. So Huna says to Ravashi, Ananami nevet hachi. Why don't we do the same thing? In other words, a man comes with the claim, I didn't see any blood. Shouldn't we then do the same thing of wash the sheet and attempt to reveal the droplets of blood? Omar le Ravashi answers, look, in practical terms, it's not going to work for us. Gihutz shalonu kikibus shalahem. Gihutz is a form of washing clothing. Our washing of clothing is done with, Rashi calls an even hazuchuchis, a type of maybe flint, stone, or the equivalent of sandpaper in stone form, some type of rough stone that enables one to remove stains from clothing. So our gihutz is kikibus shalahem, accomplishes in terms of cleanliness level what their kibus accomplishes. Their kibus is the washing of clothing in water without using the rock or sandpaper. In other words, the quality of the water there, and when we say there, it's a reference to Rabban Gamliel's situation there in Eretz Yisrael, possibly. The quality of the water there was so good that just by soaking it, without rubbing it, they achieved a level of cleanliness that our gihutz accomplishes. What he's answering, in other words, after Huna made this suggestion, Rav Ashi is saying we're not able to accomplish a cleansing of the sheet without actually rubbing it, and as a result of rubbing it, you're going to remove the blood also. It's going to be an inconclusive test. In his case, or in Leo's case, he was able to have the covering material, in this case the zera, the semen, removed without rubbing it with a stone, simply because the waters in Eretz Yisrael, where Rav Gamliel was located, were so much better for clothing washing purposes that they didn't need to rub it with a even zechuchis. So we continue in the Gemara. V'i amris nevet gihutz, and if you say, well, okay, well let's do gihutz, let's use the sandpaper, the flint rock for washing the clothing. So he says back, Ma'avro le humrusa, the flint rock that you use is going to rub out the blood as well. So it's not going to be a conclusive type, we'll say, test. Hahu d'osa l'kamei d'Rav Gamliel bar Rebbe, a case of a man coming to Rav Gamliel, the son of Rebbe. Omar le, the husband says, Rebbe bo'alti v'lo mosasi dam. I had intimacy and I didn't see any blood. Omra le, so the woman says back, Rebbe adayin basulani, I'm still a virgin. Omar lohen, so Rabbi Gamliel says, okay, I hear your claims, and now I have the following to say. Haviu li shtei shvachas, bring for me 2 bondmaids. Achas besula v'achas bula. Make sure one is a virgin and the other is a woman that had already had intimacy. Haviu lo, they brought 2 women like that, these 2 bondmaids. V'hoshivan al pi chavas shel yayin, and he had these 2 women sit on a barrel of wine. Maybe we should imagine that the barrel of wine certainly it's aromatic. Let's assume, let's say the top is off, and they sat over the wine on top of the barrel, and with an open barrel underneath them. Be'ula recha nodef. The shifcha, this bondmaid who had already been in a state of intimacy with some fellow, the be'ula, so the wine aroma was perceptible through her breath. Besula ein recha nodef. The besula, the woman who had never had intimacy, there was no perceived wine aroma on her breath. So the fact that a woman is a basula will prevent the wine aroma from rising up through her body, out through her breath. After Rabbi Gamliel does this with the 2 bondmaids, Afzu Hoshiva, he then took this woman, the Jewish girl, whose husband had claimed he didn't see any blood, and he took her, Velo Hoya Recha Nodef, and there was no aroma scent coming from her, indicating that she is still a basula. Omar lo, so Rabbi Gamliel says to the fellow, Lech zechei b'mekcha, go and enjoy, take and benefit your acquisition. In other words, you can live in security with your wife. She did not do anything wrong. The Gemara asks a technical question. V'nivdok me'ikara b'gava, with regard to the test to see whether this is true. So the Gemara's question of v'nivdok me'ikara b'gava, why didn't they run this test initially through the girl in question? Why the need for bringing in these 2 bondmaids? The Gemara answers, Gemara have a shmialei, maisa lo have a chozi. Called the barrel test is something that Rabbi Gamliel had heard about, but he never saw it in action. This savar, and he figured Dilma lo kim le begava de milsa shapir. Maybe it's not such a. I heard that it's a. You can distinguish between a basul and a bula through this method, but maybe it's not so reliable. Maybe you can't really discern the difference. V'lav orach aro lezuzuli b'vnois Yisrael, and it's not proper derech eretz to subject a Jewish girl to this with all that is implied. So as to avoid the zilzul to Bnei Yisrael, he ran the test first on these bondmaids, for whom the zilzul factor is not present. And this you might ask, well, why the difference? Is this discriminatory or something? That is something worthy of further analysis, of separate analysis. There's a lot more on the topic about different lifestyles that we'll say the slave population ran versus the lifestyles of proper Jewish girls. With with that in mind, then we see that we understand better why Rav Gamliel didn't immediately take the Jewish girl and seat her on the open barrel, but rather wanted to test out the effectiveness and the reliability of this method beforehand with the bondmaids. Hahud asla kamed Gamliel hazokein. A man came to the elder Rabban Gamliel. Omar lo Rebbe Boati v'lo matzo sidam. The husband claims, I had intimacy with her first time, and she was supposedly a basula, and I didn't find any blood. Omra lo, the woman responds, Rebbe, mi mishpachas durkati ani she'ein lahen lo dam nida v'lo dam basulim. She says, I am from the Durkati family. We'll see later an analysis of that particular family name, but I'm from the Durkati family, and in our family, the women's female cycles are practically non-existent. They don't have dam nida, and they also don't have dam basula, meaning when penetration is made, there isn't any release of the blood that you would find by other women. Bodak Rabban Gamliel Bekrevisel, Umatsu Kidver. Rabban Gamliel ran a little investigation amongst her relatives and found that what she was claiming is true. So that the husband's claim of I had initial intimacy and did not see any blood is not reflective of her having been with another man. Omar lo ilech sechei b'mekcha. Rabban Gamliel says to the husband, go and enjoy your wife. Ashrecha shisochisa lemishpachas durkati. Fortunate are you that you merited marrying into the Durkati family. My Durkati. What is the meaning of that expression, of that name? Dor Kotua, the cut-off generation. We'll appreciate this a little more just by going on in the Gemara. Omar Rebbe Chanina. Now Rebbe Chanina makes a point that lasts a number of lines. Tanchumin shel hevel nichamoi Rabban Gamliel li'oisoi ha'ish. Rabban Gamliel, when he said go and enjoy, benefit from your wife, was actually consoling him with empty consolation. The Tani Rebbe Chia. Kishem shasor yofeli, so just like sour is sourdough. It accomplishes what yeast accomplishes. It causes other dough to rise. So just like sour is beneficial to dough, kach domim yofin leisha. So too, the presence of blood in women is beneficial for the woman to hasten pregnancy. So that a vigorous, let's say, female monthly cycle is actually beneficial for women to enter pregnancy faster. V'tana mishum Rabbi Meir kol isha shedamea merubin boneha merubin, and it's taught in the name of Rabbi Meir that women that have a large amount of blood released during their monthly cycles, that is a sign of a woman that can produce a lot of children. So that when Rabban Gamliel was informed that she's a Dorkati and indicating that they don't have this blood, his response to the fellow of, go in and benefit from your wife. What kind of benefit he's going to have from her? She's not going to be one to produce many children and with difficulty enter pregnancy. We continue with the analysis of Rav Gamliel and his response to this fellow in the next couple lines. Itmar Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba Omar Zechei b'mekcha Omar lei. Rabbi Yirmiyah says, in fact, Rav Gamliel said to him, go and benefit from your acquisition, enjoy your wife and benefit from her. Rabbi Yossi bar Oven Omar Nischayev b'mekcha Omar lei. Rabbi Yossi says, no, Rav Gamliel didn't say go and Zechei, which has a positive upbeat connotation, but rather suffer through, so to speak, with your wife. Nischayev is a word that indicates something that is negative. You have to accept the debt of such a woman upon yourself. So we have two approaches, Rabbi Yirmiyah and Rabbi Yossi, as to what did Rabbi Gamliel say. According to Rabbi Yossi bar Oven, who said Nischayev, we understand what he meant when he said go and accept the obligation, the burden of such a woman. That is in accordance with Rabbi Chanina's teaching, and we saw you can use the arrow to navigate. If you go up a number of lines, you see Rabbi Chanina there had said Tanchumin shel hevel licham Rabbi Gamliel lo yisaish. So Rabbi Yossi bar Oven, who says that Rabbi Gamliel said Nischai Mekcha, is in the spirit of Rabbi Chanina's teaching above. But according to Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba, who has Rabban Gamliel saying Zechei, go and benefit from your acquisition, what benefit is there in such a woman? The Gemara answers there is a benefit. The lo asi lidei safek nida, in having intimacy with a woman like this, there is, practically speaking, no situation of her experiencing a nida flow, a menstrual flow, which is a very serious offense if it does take place in the course of intimacy. So this fellow is spared from ever encountering such a situation, such a sinful type situation. Hahu de oso lekamei de Rebbe. A fellow comes to Rebbe, Omar Lei, the husband says, Rebbe, bo'alti v'lo motzo sidam. I had intimacy and I did not see any blood. Omra lo, the wife says, Rebbe, adayin besula hoyisi. I had been a besula. Ushnei batsoras have, and it was a time, it was years of batsoras, of famine. Ra Rebbe shepneim shchurim. Rebbe saw that their complexion was darkened as a result of their being famished. Tziva alehem v'chnisum lemerchotz. Rebbe instructed that they should be taken to be bathed. V'hechinu v'hishkum. He gave them food and drink. V'chnisum lecheder, and he put them into a room in private. Boal umotzodam. The husband had intimacy, and lo and behold, there was blood. Omar loy. The Rebbe says to the husband, Lech zechei b'mekcha, go and enjoy and benefit from your wife. Kori Rebbe aleim. Rebbe referred to them the following pasuk: Tzofad oiram al atzmom yovesh hoya ka'etz. We look at Rashi in the upper part of the Rashi commentary, third of the way down, approximately from the top. Tzofad oiram. He quotes two grammarians, Rashi, grammarians of his time. Dunash Piresh. Dunash was the name of one grammarian. Kamo Dovak Oiram al Atzmam, like it's suggesting that as a result of the famine, their skin stuck to their bones. So Menachem Piresh Shachar Oram, the darkness of their skin. But for our purposes, we see that the state of famine resulted in either the skin contracting or the blood flow not being present under those circumstances. Of course, from this story, it would seem that the skin had contracted, thereby causing we'll call it an opening during the initial penetration, but with the food and drink that they had, they then we'll say there was some type of physical recovery, and the skin, the tissue, the membrane that generally speaking seals that aperture became pronounced, and hence at this point, in fact, the penetration resulted in a blood flow. The Mishnah. Besula ksubasa mosayim valmona mona. The ksuba, the amount written into the a marriage document for a basula marriage, a marriage with a virgin, The minimum amount that's written in is Mosayim 200 zuz. The almona, mona, and with regard to an almona, 100. The bow tie shape that you see is explained on the side under the mivneh. Muad, this bow tie is designed litzor kesher im hamishna soif yud aleph amud aleph. There's a mishnah there which also speaks about a basula and amounts paid for the ksuba. Hence, we'll be able to connect the two mishnayos with this marking. The Mishnah says, Besula, Almona Grusha V'chalutza, Minho Erisin, a woman who is a virgin. She became a widow, or divorced, or experienced chalitza, and all of this was from her state of mere erusin with the first husband. The first husband had divorced her, or died on her, when she was still only an arusa. Arusa is that first stage of marriage prior to their having intimacy. So she's still a basula, even though she is described as an almona, or a grusha, or a chalutza. The chalutza, of course, is a case of a man having died, leaving no children, and a surviving brother of the deceased, in this case, releases her through the shoe removal ceremony of chalitza, and now she wants to marry someone else. So that new husband is going to have to provide a ksuba, as the Mishnah says, ksubason mosayim. The second husband will have to provide a ksuba with 200 zuz written in as the amount. He is marrying her with the status, with the chazaka. The word chazaka or becheskas besula means there's a given status that she has of being a virgin. V'yesh lohen tainas besulim. The second husband can claim, if it be the case, that he felt that she was not a basula, like we saw in the previous sugyas. A claim of Pesach Pasuach or Lo Motzah Sidam, and that would be an acceptable claim because she was understood to have been, in fact, a basula, as we just explained in the Mishnah. The Rashi points out, V'yeshlan tainas basulim im lo motzah hashemi basula. If the second husband, the new husband, does not find her to be a basula, avda kol ksubasa. She will end up losing the ksuba, the mekach tos hilo. It's a marriage under mistaken circumstances. He expected her to be a basula, and she turns out to be not so. Now we emphasize here, he expected, he had reason, he had a basis for expecting virginity because she was becheskas basula. And all of that is a function of her departure from the first husband from her state of erusin. She had not reached that point of, we call nisuin, which we associate with her initial act of intimacy, again, with that first husband. The Gemara from here till the end of today's daf, this will take us to the top of Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, is a sugya that we could describe as etymology. By way of markings, we have a volcano shape and a diamond that appears. So on the side of the Gemara, you can see that the diamond and the squiggle underline introduce Memros Shel Rav Chana Bagdasah. He figures as the author of a number of the upcoming statements made, and hence we highlighted him accordingly. The trapezoid or volcano shape that you see, Pirushe Milim Utchunosehem. These are explanations of different words, and in some cases the explanation is based on the word itself, the word being a type of contraction representing two other words or more words, and in some cases we're going to explain the nature of the item featured in the volcano. A minor correction. We made reference to a squiggle underline, but we won't be using that marking immediately. You will see that one appears 4 lines from the bottom where the Eboyas Amo expression is marked thusly, as we ordinarily mark alternative explanations. But we now go to the Gemara. My almona. What is in that word? Omar Rav Chona Bagdisa. Bagdisa is a reference to Baghdad, the city from which Rav Chona came. So Rav Chona Bagdisa tells us almona is al shem mona, a term that we associate with her because of the mona, the 100 zuz that she would receive if she remarries. The Gemara asks, Almona mino erusin ma'i kol meimar. What about a woman who became widowed from a state of erusin, where we saw that if she remarries, she gets a ksuba of 200? Ma'i kol meimar. So Almona mino erusin, what's there to say about her? The Gemara answers, Aidi daha kori lo almona. Since the woman, we'll call it the standard type almona, woman whose husband died after they had already consummated their marriage, and she wants to remarry, she gets a mona, 100. So ha nami kori lo almona. She too, the almona mino erusin, is also called thusly, even though in her case it doesn't actually reflect the mona amount, because she does get 200. The Gemara asks, Almona diksiva ba'iraisa ma ikal lemeimar. The word almona appears in the Torah, and upon the giving of the Torah, there wasn't a ksuba established for almonos. So how do you account for the word almona found in the Torah? Answer, the asidin rabbanon de misakni la mona. The Torah, being the prophetic work that it is, it anticipated the future establishment on the part of the rabbanon of a ksuba of 100, of a mona, which is 100 for the widow. Question: Umi kosav krol osid? Do psukim state things or describe things based on the future? The more answers in, yes, it does, very, very much so. Dichtiv, the pasuk says, "V'shem anor hashlishi fidekel hu holech kidmas ashur." The rivers that are described in the beginning of the book of Brachis, Perek Sheni of Brachis, describes the rivers in the context of Gan Eden. And it says that the third river was the Chidekel, and it flows near Ashur. V'tana Rav Yosef, Ashur zu Shlita. Ashur is Shlita. Shlita is the name of a city, and we point out Umi Havoi was Ashur, which is the name of a city known as Shlita. Was it built at the time of creation? Of course not. Elodasida. It will be built. And yet, at the time of creation, in the story of creation, in the second chapter of Sefer Brachis, you already see an allusion to something that hadn't come about yet. Hachanami, so too with regard to Almona de Asida. She's called Almona in anticipation of the eventual takana of the Rabbanan for a ksuba of a mona, 100 zuz for the widow. The Omar Rav Chona Bagdisa, motar. Here we're not focusing on the letters of the word per se. We did so in the case of almona, which the word contains the word mona. We said al shei mona. It's in respect to her receiving a ksuba of 100. When a mona means 100. This word motar, as Rashi says, we're not going to be darshaning, we're not explaining this based on the letters of the word, but rather a description of motar. Motar is rain. What does rain do? It does a number of things. Mashke, marve, mizabel, ma'adein, umamshich. Rashi explains a couple of the words. Mizabel esarts means it fertilizes the land. The word mashke is simple. It means it gives to drink. Rain is the drink of the ground. Marve, it quenches the thirst. And we said mizabel has to do with fertilizing, making the land productive. Uma'adein, Rashi says, Ma'adein noisein edno v'ziv beferos. It gives a type of quality and glow to the fruits. And mamshich, it causes, it promotes growth, or it creates a flow. Omar Rava bar Rabbi Yishmael v'itemo Rav Yemar bar Shalmiah. Rava, or in some versions have Rav Yemar, telling us my kra. What's the pasuk that indicates that rain has all of these qualities? So the pasuk says Tlomea. The Tlomea are the furrows of Eretz Yisrael. Ravei naches gedudeha birevivim temogigena tzimcha tevorech. Rashi explains a little further how you see all of the above in this pasuk. Rashi, we could look at together. Ravei naches gedudel kasher birevivim temogigena. Ravei Hare mashke umarve. Word rave means it gives to drink and quenches. Temogigena, hare, that word temogigena is associated with mizabel. Me'adein umamshich es haperos nafka, the idea that rain gives a type of quality and glow to the fruits is learned, mit simcha tevorech, from that part of the pasuk. The simcha is the growth is blessed. The Gemara continues, Omer of Ozer, Mizbeach. Notice the word Mizbeach in the volcano shape, that's the altar. What are the characteristics of the altar with regard to our Gemara? Meziach umezin mechabev mechaper. The word Meziach at this point is thought to mean, the Gemara will question this later, but is thought to mean that it pushes aside sins. In other words, by bringing sacrifices, one achieves atonement. So it pushes away sins. Mezin means in the merit of sacrifices being offered, so sustenance comes to the world. Mechabev has to do with endearment. It creates a bond, endears the people of Israel to the Almighty. Mechaper means it affords atonement. The Gemara asks, Hainu mechaper, hainu meziach. Atonement and meziach, pushing away sins, are essentially one and the same. The Gemara answers, we have to give a new pshat now for meziach. It's meziach gezeros, through offering sacrifices on the altar, so it pushes aside edicts, evil edicts from the nation of Israel. Umechaper avonos, and affords atonement for sins. The Omer of Chana Bagdisah, Tamri, and now he looks into the word Tamri, a reference to dates. And dates have a number of qualities. The Gemara lists them off: Meshachnon, Masbon, Meshalshalon, Me'ashron, Velo, Mefankon. Meshachnon, Rashi explains, it creates heat. It creates body heat. Masba'on, it is satisfying. One who eats dates will feel a sense of satisfaction. Mishalshalon, it also loosens one's bowels. Ma'ashron, Rashi says, Machzika is koyach, kamo ishu chomutz. It promotes strength. V'lo mefankon, Rashi says, "V'lo mefandin einen marbus istenisa al halev v'kulam l'shevach." It's one who eats dates will not develop into a fussy individual. It's a type of real healthful food that doesn't create istenisa. Istenisa is fussiness and finickiness. Omar Rav, ochal tmorim al yoreh. Rav says that if one eats dates, he should not issue halachic legal rulings. that's a function of it having this intoxicating quality. Meisvei, we ask Timorim regarding dates. Shachus v'arvis yofis. Eating dates in the morning and the evening is good. It's beneficial. Rashi says those are times after one ate a meal, after his morning meal, after his evening meal. Eating dates is good. But mincha ros, at the mincha time, mincha is the afternoon time. This is a period of time before eating, it's before the evening meal, and it's after one had experienced his afternoon rest, or his noontime rest. So eating dates at that time is not good. B'tzarayim ein kamoisam. Eating dates at noon, which is after your meal, it's a time of day after the meal. There's probably sort of late morning or noontime meal, and then you're still at Sarayim, it's after the meal, you haven't gone to rest yet. That's a great time for eating the dates. And dates accomplish the following three things. It's mevatel, it cancels three things. Machshavara, v'choli me'ayim, v'tachtonius. It cancels bad thoughts, and it has some type of what's called psychological value. Chole me'ayim, it is a remedy against digestive problems, and tachtonius might be translated as hemorrhoids. So we read this source and we see all kinds of positive qualities about dates, and yet Rav just before this said that one who eats dates should not issue legal rulings. So is it not so that this source challenges Rav's negative viewing of the dates? The Gemara responds, the first of a couple responses. Mi amrina de lo malo. Does this source say that they're not good? Or I should say, did Rav say that they're not good? Aluya malu. Rav will acknowledge the benefits of the dates. However, momentarily it causes a person to become a bit intoxicated, and as a result, Rav said he should not issue legal rulings which demand sobriety. Midi dahave achamra, similar to the nature of wine. The omamar hashoser vias yayin al yora, one who drinks a revius, it's a liquid quantity, a specific quantity of wine, he should not issue rulings. Again, this is not countering the benefits of wine, but as far as the necessary soundness of mind, clarity of thought that HaRav demands, that legal rulings demand, that will be upset through either eating dates or drinking a revius of wine. Another approach to resolving the Taneg source with Rav's comment. Lo kashya homakami namo holaboser namo. The dates are beneficial after you ate namo. Namo is bread. Dates are not beneficial if it's on an empty stomach. The Omar Abaye, Omar Li Aim. Abaye says that his aim told him, aim is his foster told him, Tamri, as far as dates are concerned, Makami Nama, before you eat bread, Kinarga Ladikula. It's like an axe to a palm tree. In other words, it's destructive, it's not good. Boser Namo, after you ate bread and then you eat dates, Ki Avra Ladosha. It's like a bolt on a door. In other words, it strengthens the body, just like a bolt strengthens a door. Dosha, now we look at that very word. Dosha is a door, doorway. Omarava derech sham, a door, and here it would appear from the Gemara that we are looking at the letters that comprise the word itself, so that dosha is a contraction, derech sham, that through the door you get to your destination. You go through the door. That's a path through the door to get where you want to go. Darga, and here again we're going to look at the the letter makeup of this word darga is a stair or a ladder, possibly. Omar Rava derech gag. It's the way to the roof. Purya. The word purya is associated with a bed. Omar Papa sheporin v'rovin olal. It's on beds that women enter pregnancy, and as a result, there is purya v'ribya. There is birth and population expansion. Omar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. We continue at the top of Yud Aleph. Af onu nomar, we too will say something. Eilinus. The word eilinus is a woman that is incapable of procreation and is incapable of entering pregnancy. So in that sense, she's like a man, like a male that does not become pregnant. So the word eilinus is duchranis, the lo yolda. She doesn't bear children. Now the key for understanding this is through Rashi. Duchranis, Rashi says loshon ayil, tamim. It's the reference to a ram. Ram is a male sheep. The pasuk says ayil tamim. The metargamin on the Aramaic of ayil tamim is dachar sholim, a complete and unblemished dachar. But that a dachar is a male animal, it's male sheep. Harehi kayil shena yolid. She, the eilinus, is like an ayil, like a male animal. So the word eilinus is based on the word ayil, a male. So even though an ayil, that's a woman, but she has that characteristic. She's incapable of bearing children.